Hey everybody, we're here today to talk about the basics of installing an entire HVAC system. I'm going to take you through the entire install, top to bottom, in a quick video with some tips and tricks. I hope you enjoy. First thing we do if installing in any basement is to lift the unit in case of flooding. You're not allowed to use wood or plastic underneath the furnace, so unless you're building with metal, typically some sort of block, concrete block, outdoor block, brick is the best choice. It's always good practice to take the bricks and set them in each corner after leveling and adjust it a little bit more to ensure that there's no bending to the metal once the unit is fully set. Once your furnace or air handler is in place, you then get the coil and place it on top. Some coils have a bendable piece or a fin that slides in, some do not. Either way, you have to always mount metal to the sides to keep it from moving at any point. Typically, each coil comes with a mounting bracket. You should put screws in all the screw holes, including 2 in the front, strapping to all 3 sides, and then tape over the edges as well. Always remember, either before or after installing your coil, to check inside and get out the manual and any other parts. They always have them in there, and you do not want to install your whole system with them still inside. Coils are typically installed with some type of pressurized gas so that you can make sure they weren't damaged before you put them in. If you check the system and there is no nitrogen or other pressurized material, then something's wrong with the coil and you should check it or return it before completing your install. Okay, so our next step is to build the plenum, which has 4 sides and a top. Our supply plenum will go on the top of this unit, and our return plenum will go on the side. This is very important. Any knockdown plenum that I've come across, you need to cut the corners out to get the cap to fit. Now guys will struggle with this, they'll put it over, they'll put it inside, they'll screw it and tape it any which way, but it's not right like that. You need to cut the corners out and do it properly to make it fully airtight. While one tech is finishing the plenum, the other tech will be hanging insulated ductwork. You can do hard duct or soft duct. We typically go with soft unless someone requests hard. Flex duct comes in black or silver and has an R rating. We typically go with R8 because that's code in New Jersey. We hang our duct every 3 feet with a vinyl mesh tape to keep everything tight to the top and inside the bays where possible. We then cut our holes in the sides of the floor so that we can get our ductwork through the top and into our stack heads. Okay, so to install the stack heads, we take our 90 boot, which is a oval to round 90, and we insert it into our stack head, like this. After you have the completed product, you screw in 4 screws, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and either tape or paste around this area here. We then screw it into the wall using these 2 flaps, as well as a bracing bar on the bottom to give it a little extra stability. We also include insulation on any outside wall so that it doesn't sweat and cause condensate on the floor. On inside walls, this is not needed. While that tech finishes installing the stack heads and flex duct, we'll go back to our plenum being built. The box is built, but we have to make it a custom size. So we measure the top, and then we measure the box, and we cut it accordingly. When our box is cut to the proper size, we then have to bend the edges so that it fits onto the unit. Once the edges are bent, we can pick it up and put it onto the unit. Once on top, all the corners need to be evenly aligned and screwed down properly in all sections. After the plenum is in place, then we have to mark out our duct holes. We go around it with a marker and then we use a special tool to cut it. The tool is called a Malco adjustable hole cutter, and I'll put a link to this tool as well as some others below if you're interested in finding it. How it works is you adjust this piece to the right size for the duct, you tighten it, and then you mark the center of your hole and drill accordingly. Once the center is drilled out, you take out your drill, replace it with the guide. Now that the guide is inserted in the drill hole, you take your other hand, turn on the drill, and pull on the side of the metal in a circular manner and cut out your hole. Now we're on to installing our takeoffs. This particular takeoff is called a sticky with no damper. The technician that is completing the flex ducts will now install onto the takeoffs. You do 2 screws over top of the wire metal and then tape around the edges and zip tie over top of that. We now place it over the hole on the side of the plenum that we just cut. This then gets screwed and painted with mastic to keep it fully airtight. We then build our return plenum the same way we built our supply plenum and cut a hole out about the size of the filter in the bottom of the furnace corner. That's where we attach our filter casing as well as our return plenum. The return plenum gets holes cut in it the same way that the supply did and flex run back to that as well. Our CFMs have to equal the same amount for the supply and return so that the machine can provide the adequate air and not be choked out. Okay, so now our duct work is complete and we're ready to move on to the air conditioned part of things. We're going to install our condenser outside on a pad. We're also going to drill through the concrete and insulate that with a 2-inch PVC conduit, which is code in New Jersey. I also want to point out placement of the line set. If you look at the neighbor's house, the line set's coming out high in the wall and makes an eyesore. We decided to drill through and come out low so that there would be no issue on the final as to how it looks. Now we're going to get ready to install our line set. This is a standard bender tool that gives us all our angles, 90s, 45s, etc. You cannot kink the line, so a bender is extremely important when doing any HVAC lines. Now I want to talk to you about a filter dryer. This comes with all the units. It's really good to have in your system. Even if you do super clean installs, there can always be a flake of something to get in there, and this will get it out. We're about to install it now. When attaching the filter dryer to the high side, you want to always make sure that the arrow is pointing away from the condenser, as that'll be the flow of the refrigerant in the line and we don't want to face it backwards. When brazing near the condenser, you should always use a wet rag, or here's a little trick for the field. You pour some water into the top and then you solder, and as the water evaporates, you just pour some more water into it, and then you don't have to use a rag, and you don't burn out your Schrader valves. When brazing, we have 2 options: to do an actual braze with an acetylene B tank, or to use silver solder and solder at a lower temperature. It must be 100% silver solder in order for it to work, and there is risk involved when doing it this way, that a small piece of the solder could break off and get stuck inside your coil or inside your compressor, which would be a huge deal at the end of the project. We recommend brazing, but did this one joint so that you can see what it looks like to silver solder. Moving on, after all our joints are bent and everything's soldered in together, we then install our piston orifice, seal it up, and continue on to our nitrogen testing. As I've stated in previous videos, nitrogen testing is typically done between 150 to 250 psi, so we'll do the same thing on this system as well. We then install a 6-wire for our thermostat because some take that many wires. We install a 2-wire for our condenser. Our yellow from the condenser goes to our Y1, and our power wire, or C wire, which is red, is going to go to the C on the board. For a standard thermostat setup, your thermostat will have 4 wires unless you give it an extra C wire. That will go the W to the white, the R to the red, the G to the green, and the Y also to the yellow. Once our low voltage is hooked up, we install our gas line with a flex, a drip tee, and a shutoff valve. The drip tee and the shutoff valve are both code in New Jersey. Now we have to install our exhaust vent, which is typically 4-inch up to about 140,000 BTU. The chimney should always be verified and the area around should always be sealed with concrete so no carbon monoxide can escape. The last thing left is to install our condensate line, which will go into a condensate pump once the unit is working. The pump is then discharged to a washing machine drain or sump pump typically. Also always remember to install a pan alarm to prevent flooding. And for safety and inspection's sake, always install 410A safety caps on your unit. So I hope you had as good a time watching the video as I did making the video, and I hope that you learned what you needed to. Please subscribe and like. We'll be making a lot of videos to come, and if you have any requests, we'd be happy to make one for you as well.